What's it like living as a female expat in Asia? Why do I bulk buy bras when I head to a European country? And what's it like to work as a teacher in Asia? Is that a good way for me to find out if I want to live in a country long term? And will I earn enough money to live on if I'm teaching, let's say, kindergarten kids? Well, if that question or any questions about being an expatriate in Asia are of interest to you, it is great to have you with me. My name is Wendy, and for more than 3 decades, I've lived and worked in 5 different countries in Asia. And I still live and work in Asia, these days in Thailand. And I want to talk about the teaching topic today because this is a question I get a lot of, and I see it in the expat forums of people who arrive in a country like Thailand or anywhere in Asia, and they decide that one way that they can maintain their lifestyle is to start teaching English. Is this viable? Well, obviously it depends on the different countries that you're in. And in this video, I'm going to talk about a few of the countries that I know that where you can work as an English teacher. I'm also going to talk about the salaries in the local currency, but I will put up on the screen what that converts to in US dollars, just as a benchmark. And I want to talk about some of the realities of teaching in a place like, let's say, Thailand, or teaching in a place like Japan. How viable is it in terms of the visa and actual living costs? Is that going to be covered? So stick around if you want to find out some more information about that. So the first thing you need to remember is that when you're talking about teaching English, the most ideal thing would be is that you're a native English speaker. And I'm just laughing because I'm tripping over my tongue. I am a native English speaker. But if you're from a country like Australia, New Zealand, the UK, America, South Africa, even I would say India, and with a caveat, because there are a lot of Indians who are actually native English speakers, but Asia's a little bit tricky sometimes with that one, but we'll come back to that. Or even the Philippines, which is a similar kind of basket. But you can get a job working in Asia as a native English speaker. There are different places to work, obviously. You could work in a language school, you could work with a kindergarten, you could work in a primary school or a high school. And if you have the right qualifications, you can work at a university. Now, I've just mentioned the qualifications, and that's one of the things that's really important. In a lot of Asian countries, and I'll list a few of these soon, actually all you require is any kind of degree, but you must do something like a TEFL or have some kind of other, ESL type qualification that's going to get your foot in the door. And there are lots of websites that you can have a look at. In Thailand, it's called ajarn.com. That's AJARN.com. Though Ajarn is a teacher, so you can look on a website like that and you'll start to see lots of jobs. And you'll think to yourself, why does that one pay, let's say, 80,000 baht, but this one pays 35,000 baht? And it will have to do with your qualifications and also which country you're from. And so in this video, in a minute, I'll go through some of the finer details of what these differences are and what it means for you as someone who might be looking for a job. So let's start with one that I know because I've done it myself, and let's start with Thailand. Salaries in Thailand, if you're working as an English teacher, depending on where you're working, can range from 35,000 up to, let's say, 60 or 70,000 baht per month. Now, this is someone who holds a degree and has got themselves a TEFL or a CELTA with 120 hours worth of training. You can actually do that kind of training in Thailand itself, actually. And you're looking for a job that's going to provide you with a non-B visa, that is to say a working visa, and you need to have a work permit. Yes, there are places who will employ you illegally, but you do really run a big risk there, and so do they. So 35,000 baht is around about $1,000, and that's not much. So that's per month. You will get extra money, maybe tutoring or something like that, but that's what it looks like if you're going to work in Thailand. You'll be provided with a work visa and a work permit, but the salary might be quite low. Now, none of this applies to people who have teaching licenses and are qualified to work in international schools. Salaries there are commensurate with international schools everywhere around the world, or maybe even in your home country. So if you have a teaching license, you have experience, you're looking for a change of scene and you want to work in the international market, that is an entirely different thing. And there are big job fairs and things like that for all of the countries throughout Southeast Asia, around the world, and in the Middle East too. I've got friends who work there. I did work in a local primary school. Actually, it's a private school, Catholic sort of hybrid thing. And I was earning around about that, I think 40,000, 45,000, but this was very early days. I now work for a resort and it's a totally different setup, and I am doing some teaching, but that's not all that I do. So that's sort of the basic salary. Was it enough for me to live on? Just. I did take extra tutorial classes on the weekends just to cover some ends. So it's not amazing, but if you're a younger person who's looking for just some experience and some fun, if you have a degree and you've got yourself a TEFL, that's what I got. I think it was like 12 weeks worth of sort of training. And you've also had some experience. I had done a lot of corporate training things and things like that in Hong Kong. So I had, background behind there, but you should be able to find yourself a job fairly easily for that kind of money. It's just about livable, but like I said, you might have to, if you're down on the lower end of the scale, you might have to take some extra tutorial classes, have tutoring students. Now, I mentioned it just a little while ago that when I talk about this, I want to talk about the Filipino community as well, because there's a lot of Filipinas who speak very good English, who teach throughout Southeast Asia for salaries that are a lot lower than that. And we can make a whole other video about the reasons behind that. But if you're a Filipina or Filipino, or also if you're an Indian who has excellent English but is looking for a job, sometimes, I'm going to be honest with you, in some places there's some prejudice around that, and they will offer you lower salaries. Make of that what you will, but that's the reality of the situation. In a place like Malaysia, and I have lived in Malaysia, but I wasn't working as a teacher there. In a place like Malaysia, the beginning salary is around about 6,000 Malaysian ringgit a month. They also require you to have a bachelor's degree of some kind, and also the same type of idea of having a TEFL or a CELTA, something like that. If you're working in a university, if you've got qualifications and background that shows that you are able to do that, you can earn up to 18,000 Malaysian ringgit a month or more, which is a very decent salary. Same thing applies if you're talking about international schools. I'm not focusing on international schools here primarily because a lot of people who might be watching this video are just interested in having, some kind of a job just to get in and have a work permit. So all of that will be provided. In Malaysia, they're quite strict about making sure that you verify that you have that bachelor's degree. So in Thailand, it's quite famous that there's a place that you can kind of pick one up, but that is not the case in Malaysia. You cannot do that. So that's about what you can expect. Anywhere from a kindergarten or primary school or a language centre might be as low as 6,000 Malaysian ringgit per month, up to, like I said, if you've got the right qualifications, 18,000 Malaysian ringgit per month for that kind of a job. Now, if you're working in Japan, which is something I think I would love to do, but I think I'm getting too old now because there are also sort of age limits on all of these work permits and things. But if you're working in Japan, the starting salary is, let me just check that. Yes, it's between 230,000 and 350,000 yen per month. Now, the one thing that sets Japan aside, and I have to say I had to do this in Thailand for myself as well, but you must have a completely clean police record, and they are very kind of strict about the way that you behave yourself and the mannerisms in there. It being Japan, they're a little bit tight on that. So you need to have yourself a bachelor's degree again. You need to have some kind of TEFL thing again. If you're working in a university, you can earn upwards of 700,000 yen per month, which is decent money. And once again, you have to show that, you're a university professor. So somebody like that's probably not watching this video. Perhaps you're someone who's thinking, let's say you think you're, 52 and you've decided you'll have a change and you'd like to give a go at this type of thing. This is the type of people that I think I'm talking to in this video. And all of these things are accessible to you. Let's have a look at South Korea. Amongst the the expat teaching community, South Korea is known, even though it might not be on your radar, but it's known for being one of the places in Asia where teachers can actually save money. I know that sounds like amazing. In Thailand, you might be struggling for that, but and maybe even Malaysia. But in South Korea, because what happens in South Korea is that teachers are provided accommodation pretty much automatically. They get all of the visas and all that kind of thing, clean bill of health. You need to have all of the same type of stuff. The salaries in South Korea start at 2.1 million won, and this is for like primary school, kindergarten, language schools, that type of thing. And if you're going up and up and up, if you are like a master's degree kind of thing and you're lecturing or something like that at a university, particularly teaching English, you can earn as much as 6 million won for the month. And like I said, South Korea is a bit of an outlier, because you can, if you want to live in South Korea and you're a native English speaker, you've got your bachelor's degree, maybe you've got a teaching license, you can actually make really decent money and save money, which is not always the same for some of these other countries. Now, I love talking about Vietnam because the amount of money just sounds so enormous, but obviously, you know, it's just how the currency works. If you're going to go and work in Vietnam, wow, the salaries sound fantastic. They really, really do. So a starting salary for a native English speaking teacher in a kindergarten or a primary school, 35 million dong. Sounds like a huge amount of money, up to 100 million dong, which sounds like a massive amount of money. But of course, obviously, with the currency conversion, that's not the same. Vietnam is also somewhere that you can actually save money as a teacher. And it's noted for its, sort of good balance of living, work-life balance, that kind of thing. Vietnam's quite relaxed. You do, again, need to have some kind of bachelor's degree. You do, again, need to get a TEFL or a TESOL. All throughout Southeast Asia, this is the case. So, and if you're a university lecturer in Vietnam, the salaries are absolutely excellent. Best places to look for work in Vietnam are Ho Chi Minh City and also Hanoi. And I've been to Hanoi a few times and it's fantastic. So Vietnam is also an option if you're looking to live in Southeast Asia and make good money and live a comfortable lifestyle. So up until now, I've talked about all of the places where it's best if you have a bachelor's degree, it's best if you go and get other qualifications. Let's talk about Cambodia. Cambodia is, shall we say, slightly more flexible. If you don't have a bachelor's degree, but you are a native speaker, a native English speaker, and you've got the right personality and maybe you have some experience, there is a way for you to creep under the wire, and this might be something that you consider. I would recommend you still go and get yourself a TEFL or a TESOL. It doesn't cost a lot of money and it's worth having that qualification. But in Cambodia, they are a little bit more flexible. Obviously, salaries sort of relate to that, between 900 US and 2,000 US top end. That's top end in Cambodia. But if you are someone who, for whatever reason, you didn't have a university degree, but you'd still like to do some teaching, maybe Cambodia is somewhere you can have a look. They are kind of they're sort of careful when it comes to things like security. So you've got to make sure that you've got a clean police record and all that kind of stuff. They are much, much lower salaries. Cost of living is also lower. And if you haven't visited Cambodia before, please go and visit Cambodia first before you decide to pack up everything and move there, because it can be a little bit hardcore, I think. But that is an option if you're someone who doesn't carry a bachelor's degree and you're still looking for work. And obviously, with all of these places, you can make extra money by working as a tutor to adults or to kids in your free time. And that might be an option for you. So, of course, there are other places to work in Asia that I haven't touched on, one of them being Indonesia. It's also possible if that's what you'd like to do. You could, of course, work in China, but I do warn you that China and the Chinese education system is very top end. It's very high end. I'm not saying that you're not a great teacher, but if you want to work in China, it's quite a rigmarole to get a good job there. You can, but you must have very good qualifications, because their own people have excellent qualifications. If you're keen to work in China, check it out by all means, but understand that you have to be quite experienced, quite knowledgeable, unless you're prepared to go to one of the really countryside areas. But if you're looking to work in a place like Shanghai, and I've got friends who work in Shanghai as teachers, they are top-notch, highly qualified, very, very experienced teachers, proper teachers. So it's not just, you know, a native English teacher kind of situation. That also goes for Hong Kong. When I was living in Hong Kong, where I lived there for 16 years, I met lots of teachers as well, and they were all very highly qualified. These expectations there, and that would be the same in Singapore. Absolutely first-class education, absolutely everywhere. So sneaking in under the wire, like you might in Cambodia or other parts of Southeast Asia, that's not going to happen for you in places like that. Now, I want to address something that's a little bit difficult to talk about, but I'm going to be honest. At the beginning of this video, I sort of hummed and hawed about, you know, if you're an English speaker and you come from the Philippines, if you're an English speaker and you come from South Africa, or if you're an English speaker and you come from India. And you could tell there was some hesitation in there. And I want to address that directly, because the truth is that sometimes in Asia, and particularly in Southeast Asia, there's a fair bit of racism that goes on, a fair bit of discrimination, I would even say. It's much better than it used to be before. But when I lived in Hong Kong, of all of the American teachers that I knew, of all of the teachers that I knew, and I knew a lot, I met one African-American teacher back in the day. Now, it has changed a lot. The whole perception has changed a lot. Southeast Asia has changed a lot. But I think it's something to be aware of. That's why I mentioned that sometimes the salaries are lower for certain passports, even if they're excellent English speakers. That's just something that you need to factor in. I'm not saying that to discourage anybody, and I certainly do not go along with any kind of discrimination. That is just not me. But it is a reality, and I just think it's, if you notice some hesitation from me, that's where it came from, because it makes me uncomfortable. But it is a reality. If you've got a passport that you know puts you into the category of European looking, then you're going to have perhaps an easier time of it initially. But that's not to discourage anybody, because there are lots of people from all around the world, excellent teachers, doing great work throughout Southeast Asia. So I hope that sort of clarifies it a bit for you. All of this stuff can be found on the internet. I found it on the internet too. But what it basically comes down to is, if you are interested in working in a place like Thailand, like Vietnam, like Cambodia, like South Korea, the outlier, like any of the other countries that I've mentioned, it is possible. Best to have a bachelor's degree. By all means, get yourself a TEFL or a TESOL or a CELTA, one of those things that sort of slips you over the line. Get on the internet and start checking it out. Do not expect that you're going to get rich out of doing it, but you will have an amazing experience. Make sure they provide your visa for you. Try not to work illegally. That's all I can say. I don't work illegally. Try not to work illegally, because it can come up and bite you in the butt. I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, you'd like some more in-depth, or you'd like to contact me personally, if I can help you, I certainly will. Just leave a message down in the messages below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I've got, 21% of the people who watch my videos subscribe. So please do subscribe. That really helps the algorithm, helps you to find me, helps me to contact you. And I hope you have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.